Mining has changed so much for the better. 07 everyone, hope you're all having a fantastic day. I hope you've all had a chance to hop into 3.19 PTU, or at the very least be able to play the PU without Xenothreat ruining everything. About a day ago, CRG added in a bunch of the mining changes into 3.19 that we've been really waiting for years now. They've talked about the changes a little bit over the last couple of months, and they've said that their aim is to make the gameplay loop a little bit more exciting, as well as allow for more multi-crew mining to be an actual viable thing to do in the game. In live right now, if you do a lot of mining, you're going to notice a couple of things. Firstly, if you want to make a decent amount of UEC, there is no reason to go for anything other than Quantanium. It's far too easy to find and far too easy to mine decent quantities of it quickly. This means while they do have a lot of minerals that are worth like a decent amount of UEC, it's just not worth going for them. You're going to make more UEC if you just completely skip them. Second, there's no UEC incentive to ever use the mole. I see even now people talk about how, well, the mole does have the larger cargo capacity, but the lasers are still basically the same, and the rocks are still basically the same, so there's no real reason to invest that UEC in that over the prospector. This just means multi-crew mining is just worse than solo play. It's just harder to organize for the same amount of money. And all of that brings me to the biggest issue with mining in live, which is that we have a tier 0 meta. There is no reason in Star Citizen live right now to ever use anything that isn't a Lancet with Surge module. This will currently guarantee crack every single rock in the game, as well as not really give you an option to use any of the other modules, the mining gadgets, the laser heads. And all of this came about around the time that we got refineries. We saw some balance changes to a lot of these that just made it not really worth using anything else. But after 24 hours now with the new update, I can safely say I think CIG are actually starting to achieve their goals here. So let's have a look at the things, and we're going to start with the rocks themselves. Everything about how these rocks work now is completely different. The way that they calculate their mass, their instability, your green zones, your green charge rate, it's very, very different. In live, you're going to find rocks that are going to be about 2,500 to roughly 9,000 mass, and that's it. That's where you stand. But in PTU, rocks can go up and well beyond the 100,000 mass stage. And the reason for this is because mass is now calculated drastically differently. Mass does now not mean more SCU. In general, more mass is going to mean more SCU, but it's not a one-to-one comparison. Most of these really, really large 100,000 mass rocks are actually full of big, heavy minerals like tungsten. We also now have a rarity system in place. So whereas previously in live, you'll see every single Q-type rock or Quantanium deposit have Quantanium in it, that is no longer the case. We now have common, uncommon, rare, and with Quantanium, I would say very rare instances where you will find these really expensive, really valuable minerals. But it has seemed like you're also going to see them in a much larger concentration. So no more rocks where it's only 2% laranite. This is a pretty good change because it means if you find rocks with high amounts of uncommon qualities, they're actually worth mining now. So you are now not only after Quantanium, which is good because Quantanium itself is now incredibly rare. That doesn't mean you're not going to find it, but it is much harder to find than it was previously. And one of the reasons for that is they've actually changed how the distribution of rocks works. What they've done now is they've basically said, hey, these certain locations have a higher chance of spawning these types of rocks, which means they have a higher chance of spawning the better types of minerals. So if you are now after Quantanium or Agricium, you're actually going to want to go to a specific point on Stanton to get those spawns more frequently. Now, I haven't had enough chance to find out where all of these minerals are located, but what I can say is that they've done a thing with the refineries in response to this. So if you have a refinery that has a Quantanium bonus, don't expect to find any Quantanium in the vicinity. You're going to have to go much further out to find those minerals. This means it now matters a lot more about which refinery you go to, because if you want to get the more out of your rock, you're going to have to go a lot further now. So all of that is to do with the crackability of rocks. But how about actually cracking the rocks? Let's have a look at the mining modules and mining heads. The first major change is between size 1 and size 2 lasers. Size 1s being the ones that you chuck on the prospector, and the mole being able to carry size 2s. Right off the bat, the laser power of all size 2s has been increased. In addition, size 2s also tend to have an extra module slot, meaning that the lasers that you do chuck on a mole are going to be a little bit more utilitarian. Amongst all of the lasers and modules, we've also seen a massive stats overhaul, including a couple of new stats, like minimum laser power. Now, this one seems to have gone over a lot of people's heads, but I think it's really important because it means some lasers are better at cracking smaller rocks. This sort of pushes towards the whole idea of not having a one-size-fits-all. Another example of some stat changes is with the Surge consumable. Previously, it would just put a flat 40% energy into the rock when you used it. Now, it gives plus 150% laser power. So you can't break literally any rock you want with this consumable anymore, but it still does something similar to what it did before. It's still increasing the laser power that you have. One last new stat that you'll actually see on the mining gadgets is about clusters. What this does is it increases the likelihood that when you actually crack the rock the first time, the minerals will crack nicely. They'll go into their little spot. So you'll have all of your grisium in one, all of your corundum in another, and it's just a little bit easier to extract that way. After testing all of these things for about 6 hours, there's a couple of things I realized. One of the good things is that 2 of the mining laser heads, the Klein and the Hofstetter, are actually decent now. They were kind of unbelievably useless in live, so it's good that we can actually use them now for a couple of things, including making our green zones a little bit larger. The Lancet, which previously was basically the best laser you could get, is honestly my least favorite now. It has a lot of negatives that make it very, very hard to use, and I don't think we'll see a lot of people using the Lancet unless they're going after extremely unstable elements, or they're one of 3 lasers on a mole and they're just giving that little bit of bonus. We actually managed to, with the Lancet, create a rock that didn't have a green zone. I've got a clip of it here. Oh, wait, what? The Helix does seem to be another decent jack of all trades as it has in the past. However, it has a very high laser minimum power, meaning it can be very tricky breaking those small rocks. It doesn't make it impossible, but it makes it a little bit annoying. All of this means as well, if you do want to use the Prospector, if you want to get a bit of extra power or you want to get a bit of extra resistance, you actually are now going to have to use the mining gadgets, which is great. So you can already see that they've been buffing the mole quite a bit, but there's another thing that's been added in there that is definitely helping multi-crew mining become more and more of a reality. With 319, they're bringing in a thing where if you have multiple ships using their lasers on a rock, the instability starts to skyrocket. Now, with large enough rocks and with the right amount of components, that's okay. You're still likely going to be able to mine those. We have theories at the moment, but haven't been able to test, that some of these 100,000 to 120,000 mass rocks may require multiple moles just to get enough laser power into them to crack. But you will have to account for that instability. I think this is a really eloquent solution to make the mole actually more profitable and give people a reason to multi-crew what I consider the best ship in the game. But I know that there's a lot of Prospector fans out there that are going to be very mad that the mole has been pushed into like this and there's now all these massive rocks. So I want to assure Prospector fans, there are plenty of rocks for you to crack. From what I can tell, everything from about 11,000 mass or lower, a Prospector can now crack. Some of these are going to be more difficult than others. Some of these may require mining gadgets, but it also appears to be that these are the majority of the rocks that are found across Stanton, these 11,000 and lower. As a small addition, there's also some rocks which are just straight to purple now. You can extract them the second you find them, which I think is a nice touch. So the rocks have changed, refineries have changed, and mining lasers have changed. But how profitable is mining now? From what I've been able to tell with about 6 hours of testing, it feels like it's about almost the same. I could feel like you could very easily make 200 to 300k AUEC solo every hour, but it's going to require far more weeks of testing, figuring out locations, finding out what the best fits are for certain rocks before we really have a grasp on just how profitable mining is now. But I can definitely say I'm optimistic about the changes. At the very least, mining is less boring. And I already found it pretty exciting, so it's way up there for me now. Mining is back on the menu. Thanks very much for watching the video, guys. Make sure to give it a like and subscribe if you did in fact enjoy the video. And don't forget to come watch me on Twitch and hang out while we play some Star Citizen, and maybe even join for a couple of mining walks. There's a lot of stuff to test out, but 319 really is shaping up to be my favorite patch over like the last 2 years. So it's very exciting days. That's about it from me. Catch you guys later. 319 has dropped. And we now have the port stuff where we can detach items, including guns and mining lasers. But there's another thing that we can detach too, which are the mining pods. Hello, mining pods. How you doing? Don't need to tell most of you what implications this has for mining, but pretty big deal. Cool, so someone clip that. I need to chuck that on Twitter or something. I need people to know about this.